Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Shadow of the Tomb Raider on the GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. I'll be doing 1080p, 900p and 720p. To skip to none of those sections of the video, check the timestamps down in the description. So first of all, I'll show you 1080p, trying to get 50 to 60 frames per second, and unfortunately that's impossible without turning off the shadows. So I'll show you low shadows and shadows turn off every now and then. I'll switch between them so you can see the performance difference and the visual difference in real time. Unfortunately, turning off shadows looks significantly worse, to be expected. It really destroys the aesthetic of the game. Then I just crank up the settings, trying to stay over 30 frames per second, and unfortunately that doesn't mean ultra settings. You have to lower some stuff in order to maintain over 30 frames per second in this demanding area. So I recommend this over using lowest settings with 40 to 50 frames per second. Then on 900p and 720p I do exactly the same thing. I try to get 50 to 60 frames per second by lowering the settings, and then I just crank up the settings, trying to maintain 30 frames per second, which on 900p and 720p is very simple. You just use maximum settings, except in textures and anti-aliasing. After all that, I'll be testing the G4560 on both 1080p and 720p, on 1080p targeting 30 and on 720p targeting 60, but unfortunately the G4560 on 720p, you can really notice that it's limiting the GPU. So to have 50 to 60 frames per second, apart from having enough GPU power, you need at least a quad-core CPU, so be aware of that. This time around, in the options menu, you need to lower a few options in groups in order to get a good FPS boost, but one of the most demanding options, at least for me, was ambient occlusion. By changing that from HBAO Plus to BTAO. BTAO was made by the developers of this game to use on their consoles. That was a good FPS boost. Then the shadow quality and level of detail both usually give a good FPS boost from the highest to high. Level of detail sometimes makes a bigger difference in places like the 10 I'm testing in this video. Screen space reflections are also a hit, but it shouldn't be a huge difference. And then screen space contact shadows should give you a decent boost in performance as well. On the pure hair option, you only have low and normal, so we only got two options there. If you lowered all the other options are still not hitting over 30 frames per second consistently, consider lowering this option. If not, just keep it on normal. And then the other options I didn't mention, just lower them in groups and it should be fine. Then for the textures, if you have 4 gigs of VRAM, use high. If you have 3 gigs, use medium. And if you have 2 gigs, use low. That was what usually worked for me with this game. If you have more than 4 gigs of VRAM, just use the ultra option. And then on the display options, you can select between DirectX 12 and DirectX 11. So far the difference between those two in this game is completely different compared to Rise of the Tomb Raider. The DirectX 12 implementation here is much better. Using DirectX 11 in my case meant a couple extra frames but higher CPU usage, so if you have an i3 8100 for example, the game stutters more in this area, so keep that in mind. I recommend using DirectX 12, but on my GTX 750 Ti, on DirectX 12 the game constantly crashes. And then on the anti-aliasing option we have SMAA, TAA, SMAA T2X and SMAA 4X. You have the description of each of the options at the right, which is always good. The consoles use TAA, and in this case it looks very good considering all the movement due to the foliage. In my opinion, just using SMAA T2X is the better option. It looks better because it combines TAA and SMAA, and it wasn't a huge performance difference compared to TAA, at least in my experience. Still, even using just TAA is a performance hit, so if you need the extra performance, turn it off. But the game has significantly more aliasing, so be warned. That was the options menu. If you want more details about this, follow the link down in the description to the Digital Foundry video. They make a fantastic explanation of all the settings, how it compares to the console versions. Highly recommended to watch that video. And then on the CPU side of things, if you have a G4560, expect to be able to maintain 30 frames per second on DirectX 12. On DirectX 11 it might drop below 30 every now and then. Then the i3 8100 is more capable of maintaining 50 to 60 frames per second, but like the G4560, it has some random stutters every now and then, especially when going into a new area. You'll notice that in all my videos testing these CPUs. It seems like the game is loading something in the background. And then when I tested the i5 8400 on the GTX 1060 3GB, I noticed that the frame rate and the frame time was significantly more consistent compared to the i3 8100, especially in those areas when you get big stutters with the i3. The i5 has some of it, but it's much less. You can really notice it by looking at the frame time graph. And to finish the video, the part I'm testing is a town that you encounter kinda early in the game, where you have a lot of foliage, a lot of NPCs, and many houses around, which was a good test to stress the CPU and GPU. You have stuff to do for both of them. And one thing I forgot to mention, the RAM usage was below 8GB all the time, so if you have at least 8GB of RAM on dual channel, it should be totally fine, running like you see in this video. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Probably for the best. Football's okay.
Sure would be great to get these thieves out of here.
Créeme. I know it sounds.
Sure would be great to get these thieves out of here.
¡Ya! ¡Mierda!
To be honest,
lo que decía.
Otra tormenta como la última y el río se llevará toda la aldea.
Sure would be great to get these thieves out of here.
Si gano yo, to be honest.
Porque solo se...
Sure would be great to get these thieves out of here.
Si gano yo, to be honest.
Sure would be great to get these thieves out of here.
Si gano yo, to be honest,
Créeme. Ay, no.
Sure would be great to get these thieves out of here.
si gano yo,